You can get anything you want at Alice's restaurant. So the lyric says anyway, but how much of this classic Thanksgiving/protest song is actually true? Let's do some fact-checking on Arlo Guthrie's Alice's Restaurant. That's next on Track by Track. Hey everybody, my name's Kyle, and this is Track by Track, music reviews, news, and commentary. Thanks for tuning in today, and if this is your first time here, please take a second to click subscribe so that you won't miss future reviews and more. Alice's Restaurant Massacre, the classic 1967 song by folk singer Arlo Guthrie, is not actually about a restaurant, just barely has anything to do with Alice, and is certainly not related to any massacre by today's definition. Still, this epic 18-minute talking blues song, more commonly known by the abbreviated title Alice's Restaurant, has gone on to become a bit of a Thanksgiving tradition. Of course, the age-old question is it a true story? The answer? Well, mostly. Yeah, it is. Alice's Restaurant Massacre tells the story of Arlo's Thanksgiving visit with his friend Alice, during which he stays in her home in an old converted church. To repay her hospitality, he decides to pack up all her garbage and haul it to the city dump. When he discovers the dump is closed for the holiday, Arlo instead opts to pitch the waste into a ditch. Following a bit of investigation, the police show up and arrest Arlo for littering. The bulk of the song then goes on to describe in comic detail Arlo's experience while under arrest, as well as the later consequences of this delinquency, which make him ineligible for the draft. So what really happened on that fateful Thanksgiving back in the mid-60s? Well, as the song describes, 18-year-old Arlo Guthrie and his 19-year-old friend Ricky spent that 1965 holiday staying with Alice and Ray Brock in their church/home/beatnik hangout. Arlo and Ricky were among about a dozen guests crashing at the church that Thanksgiving, and the resulting festivities did indeed generate a large amount of garbage, including many bottles and apparently a ruined couch. With a mix of guilt and gratitude for his gracious hosts, Guthrie packed all the waste into the back of his VW bus and set out for the city dump to dispose of it. As described in the song, the dump was indeed closed, so Arlo and Ricky, being teenagers, decided to simply dump their garbage on the side of the road. Soon after, the mess was discovered by police, who then combed through the waste for clues to its origin. And although the song suggests Guthrie was identified by finding his name on a discarded envelope, it was actually Ray Brock's name that was found. Following some questioning, Arlo and Ricky were identified as the perpetrators and were subsequently arrested by Police Chief William Obenheim, the real-life Officer Obie from the song. Incidentally, Obenheim would later go on to play himself in the 1969 film version of Alice's Restaurant. As for the details of Guthrie's arrest experience, which make up much of the comedy of the song, it's impossible to know what is fact and what is fiction. It's fair to assume much of the story has been creatively embellished for the sake of amusement. However, Chief Obenheim does dispute the claim that the boys were handcuffed during the arrest. It's also worth noting that while Guthrie's song may be the best-known telling of the tale, it wasn't the first. Local paper The Berkshire Eagle broke the story in their November 29, 1965 edition. The paper reports the boys were fined $25 each, which could account for the $50 referenced in the song. And while the lyrics state the boys were forced to clean up the garbage in the snow, the Eagle claims they did so following a heavy rain. Now, according to Guthrie, the composition of the song that would become Alice's Restaurant Massacre began almost immediately following this whole ordeal. But, of course, the arrest is only half of the story of the song, which is why it would still be months later before the rest of the lyrics would fall into place. As Arlo put it, he still had other experiences to live through before the song could be completed. And while the song today is most closely associated with Thanksgiving, at the time it came out, it was intended as a war protest song. Fast forward to the draft interview and examination portion of the song. Nothing about this personal event in Arlo Guthrie's youth was in any way newsworthy, so there's no real way to separate the fact from the fiction here. What we do know is that there was indeed an Army office located in a building on Whitehall Street in New York City, as described in the song. Like many of his young counterculture friends, Arlo Guthrie was determined to avoid the draft, and they employed various tactics in service of that mission. Most notably, of course, there's the chanting of "Kill, kill, kill" during the interview, which, according to the song, seemed to have more of a positive influence on the draft officials. But the irony, of course, would come from the revelation that Guthrie's post-Thanksgiving arrest might actually disqualify him from the draft. According to the song, Guthrie was rejected by the military on account of those charges. Now, most stories I've seen seem to back that up, but I have seen a few accounts to the contrary. It's been reported that rather than being dismissed, Guthrie was actually given a 1A classification for the draft lottery, but ultimately his number never did come up and he was never called for mandatory service. So where's the massacre? Obviously, there's no bloodbath in this story. There's nothing even remotely approaching the violence of, say, the Kent State massacre that would occur 3 years after the release of this song. No, in this case, the word massacre is used with a meaning different from our contemporary interpretation. By massacre, Arlo Guthrie was actually referring to the series of absurd events that cumulatively occurred to make up the wild story of the song. And, after all, the most absurd notion of all, the entire political point of the song, was the fact that the so-called crime of littering was somehow morally prohibitive to military service. Service that, at that time, would have meant participation in a war many people like Guthrie considered immoral. Hence his suggestion that the song itself could be a rallying cry, or as the lyrics call it, the Alice's Restaurant anti-massacre movement. And what about Alice's actual restaurant, eternally immortalized by Arlo Guthrie's song? The small diner was actually called The Back Room, and was located behind a grocery store in Stockbridge, Massachusetts. During that time, celebrated Americana artist Norman Rockwell had a studio upstairs from the diner. In fact, some people believe Rockwell's famous Saturday Evening Post cover called The Runaway not only depicts Alice's restaurant, but also the real-life Officer Obie from the song. In reality, the setting of the painting is the food counter at a Howard Johnson's, and although Officer Obie is rumored to have posed for Rockwell numerous times, it is State Trooper Richard Clemens that appears in this particular piece. As for the restaurant itself, Alice had actually closed the back room and moved on to a new restaurant endeavor by the time the song made her former location famous. With the rising popularity of the song, though, Alice had some success in the early 1970s with a franchise of Alice's Restaurant locations. And although Alice is no longer the proprietor of the original location in Stockbridge, a variety of small restaurants have called the space home over the years. You can still find the space behind the Stockbridge General Store, but as of this recording, the restaurant appears to once again be vacant. Now, for over 50 years, Arlo Guthrie's Alice's Restaurant Massacre has been a Thanksgiving Day tradition for rock and now classic rock stations across the country. In my house, we pull out the CD every year as well. It's as much of an annual tradition for us as turkey, stuffing, and pecan pie. But how about you? Do you manage to hear it on the air on your favorite classic rock station each year? Maybe you've even got a copy on vinyl. Let me know if you're a fan of Alice's Restaurant down in the comments section below. Once again, my name's Kyle, and this has been Track by Track. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, plus check out some of these other videos below that I think you might also enjoy. And of course, be sure to click subscribe, because true music fans always want new releases the day they come out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.